Letitia Baldrige was among the distinguished guests at the White House Diplomatic Corps reception on January 27, 1981, just days after Ronald Reagan's inauguration. At age 59, she was no longer orchestrating the details of such events, but was attending as an honored guest. Yet, in the photograph from that evening, she is captured peeking into a room, watching the movement of press and guests, a reminder of her years in the White House, where she once carefully curated the balance between privacy and publicity, power and presentation. Although she was a guest, Baldrige had another reason for attending that evening. She had been brought in to quietly support and advise the new White House Social Secretary, Muffy Brandon, a close friend of Nancy Reagan. The role of a social secretary is among the most critical, yet often overlooked, positions in the White House. Responsible for managing all events at the executive mansion, the social secretary oversees everything from state dinners and diplomatic receptions to ceremonies, luncheons, and even presidential speeches. Every detail, from guest lists and seating arrangements to press access and event flow, is carefully orchestrated to ensure that White House functions project the proper image of the presidency, maintain protocol, and serve diplomatic and political objectives. A seasoned expert like Baldrige, who had mastered these skills during the Kennedy administration, was an invaluable resource to her successor. Baldrige had not only served as the White House Social Secretary under Jacqueline Kennedy from 1961 to 1963, but had set the standard for what White House entertaining should be. Her influence on how administrations hosted world leaders, engaged with American culture, and projected diplomatic soft power continues to resonate today. When she left the White House in June 1963, she was succeeded by Nancy Tuckerman, a longtime friend of Jacqueline Kennedy who continued many of Baldrige's traditions and ensured a smooth transition during a tumultuous period in the Kennedy administration. Born February 9, 1926, in Omaha, Nebraska, Letitia Baldrige was raised in a world where poise and public service were expected. Her father, Howard Malcolm Baldrige, was a U.S. congressman, and her brother, Malcolm Baldrige Jr., would later serve as Ronald Reagan's Secretary of Commerce. Educated at Vassar College, she developed a deep appreciation for international diplomacy, which led her to work in embassies before landing in Washington's elite social circles. Before joining the White House, she had already made a name for herself in diplomatic society, serving as the social secretary for U.S. Ambassador David Bruce in Paris and Claire Booth Luce, the U.S. Ambassador to Italy. These experiences gave her a rare skill set. She understood European diplomacy and American charm, a combination Jacqueline Kennedy found irresistible. When Jacqueline Kennedy became First Lady, she initially wanted her close friend Susan Mary Alsop as her social secretary. But when Alsop declined, Letitia Baldrige was the natural choice. She was 35 years old, confident and capable of handling the immense social and diplomatic demands of the Kennedy White House. Baldrige transformed White House social life. She elevated state dinners, ensuring they were not just lavish affairs, but reflections of American culture and intellectualism. She worked closely with Jackie on restoring the White House's historical significance and making diplomatic gatherings both intimate and grand. Some of the most important events she oversaw included the 1961 State Dinner for President Charles de Gaulle of France, which set the tone for the Kennedy administration's cultural diplomacy, the historic dinner for Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru of India, and the glittering 1962 White House dinner for Nobel Prize winners, where President Kennedy famously quipped that the gathering was the most extraordinary collection of talent, of human knowledge, that has ever been gathered together at the White House, with the possible exception of when Thomas Jefferson dined alone. She also played a key role in organizing White House concerts featuring world-renowned artists, helping establish the White House as a center for cultural excellence. Beyond the glamour, she managed crises with grace and composure. She detested poor manners, but rather than chastise, she led by example. If someone lacked etiquette, she handled it with quiet correction rather than public embarrassment. Her pragmatic view of the press made her particularly effective. She understood that White House events were not just social functions but diplomatic theater, and she worked carefully to ensure the right image was projected to the public. Baldrige remained an integral part of the tight-knit group of White House social secretaries, a tradition that continues today. This exclusive club consisted of those who orchestrated the most powerful rooms in Washington. Among her contemporaries and successors were Nancy Tuckerman, who replaced Baldrige under Jackie Kennedy, Lucy Winchester, who served under Nixon, Maria Downs, who served under Ford, Gretchen Poston, who served under Carter, and Muffy Brandon, who served under Reagan. These women regularly gathered, exchanging stories, best practices, and insights about the ever-changing nature of White House entertaining and diplomacy. They understood that history was often made in the quiet moments of social exchange. Baldrige, with her wit, warmth, and exacting standards, was considered the dean of this group, mentoring younger social secretaries who followed in her footsteps. By 1963, Baldrige was exhausted. The long hours, the relentless demands, and constant travel had taken a toll. She felt she had done her part in shaping the Kennedy administration's legacy, and she decided to resign in June 1963. But her next job came straight from the Kennedy family itself. Joseph P. Kennedy, the patriarch of the family, recruited her to work at the Kennedy-owned Merchandise Mart in Chicago. He recognized her organizational genius and high standards, and he lured her away from Washington. Baldrige accepted, but the role did not hold the excitement or purpose of the White House. Though prestigious, it lacked the thrill of orchestrating world-changing events. She ultimately left, seeking work that felt more impactful and true to her talents. In 1964, Baldrige married real estate developer Robert Hollensteiner, and together they had two children, Claire and Malcolm. Despite her demanding career, she was known for balancing work and family with grace, a theme she wrote about extensively. Her children have largely stayed out of the public spotlight, though they remain the custodians of her legacy. Letitia Baldrige remained a respected voice in Washington and beyond. She continued lecturing, advising, and mentoring younger generations. She believed that manners were not about outdated rules, but about respect and confidence. She passed away on October 29, 2012, at the age of 86 in Bethesda, Maryland, due to cardiac complications. With her passing, Washington lost one of its most refined, gracious, and historically influential figures. Following her White House years, Baldrige became a prolific author, writing over 20 books on etiquette, social skills, and leadership. Her most famous books included Letitia Baldrige's Complete Guide to Executive Manners 1985, a bestseller that remains a corporate etiquette Bible, New Manners for New Times 23, a modern etiquette update that remains in print, and A Lady First 2001, her memoir detailing her extraordinary life. The photograph of her at the 1981 White House reception peeking from the sidelines, watching the guests, analyzing the moment captures what made Letitia Baldrige legendary. She understood that history was shaped not just by laws and policies, but by human interaction, the elegance of diplomacy, and the power of a well-run event. She set the gold standard for White House social life, trained generations of social secretaries, and left behind a lasting blueprint for etiquette and diplomacy. Her words, books, and influence endure, proving that good manners, when paired with intelligence and leadership, can truly shape history.